Now, what we're discussing is this fundamental experience, which I am deeply convinced is the source of the need for any therapy. And the metaphor that I use to refer to that source, that need, I call it basic training. In other words, the pattern of emotions, feelings, reactions, judgments that we get trained to make part of ourselves, to make part of our understanding of the world and of how to conduct ourselves in the world, most of which we learn during the years of childhood. And that's why I compare it to the elephants with their need for staying with the herds past 14, and the other trainings that the evolutionary creatures, such as we are, all require. And we need a very deep one and a very complex one. Now, I refer to it as basic training, not like all metaphors. If it works for you, fine. If it doesn't, throw it away. Make up one of your own. That's the important thing about this. But from my mind, the reference to it as basic training refers to the fact that, as most of you know, when someone is inducted into the military, usually a young person, these days it could be a man or a woman, that young soldier is put through a series of experiences which are aimed at training him or her to automatically respond to a situation, to read it in an instant, to react, respond, and to do the appropriate thing in relation to it that is required by the needs of warfare. Now, analogously, my opinion is that all of us are essentially being trained in a manner that is similar. When I receive a certain kind of reinforcement, when I receive a certain kind of praise, when I receive a certain kind of instruction that I find helpful, when I am attacked, when I am condemned, when I am made afraid, when I feel that what I am thinking or feeling is in some way unacceptable or in some way dangerous, I will little by little assimilate, ingest, take in that training, and it will act automatically in me for the rest of my life. I cannot emphasize too firmly how good we human beings are at doing that. I will frequently say to my clients, did you notice how well you have listened? And it's very often the case if someone is troubled or is disturbed by something that he or she will not recognize. They'll feel the pain, they'll feel the distress, they'll feel the need for some kind of help or therapy, but they won't realize how well they listen to the damaging information. Now, damaging information could also include a lack of information. In other words, if I need a certain kind of instruction, if I need a certain kind of example, if as a young boy or a young girl I am looking to my elders, to the caretakers, as I call them, to give me some kind of instruction, to indicate some kind of pattern, and that is not there, that is not given to me, or is subverted by the fact that there's some other danger or some other relationship that doesn't work, well, then there will be a deep lack in my basic training, and there'll be a gap in it, which I will again experience for the rest of my life. Now, what I'm saying about basic training, what I'm saying about this basic emotional pattern that we learn from our caretakers, is that it is always there in every single human being, every minute of life. I mean to be as extreme and as universal as that. It is never not operating. That I say it that emphatically because, again, to emphasize, this is usually unconscious. It is usually out of sight. We are not aware that it is even there. So that frequently enough, if you try to talk about any part of this, you'll get a reaction, something like, well, what are you talking about? Oh, you think too much. Oh, you feel too much. Oh, you make too much of it. You make mountains out of molehills. And you get dismissed if you're trying to raise an awareness about some aspect of this basic training, because it's automatic. It's something that we ingest, that we take in as the instruction for how to live as a human being in life. And it is not originally prescribed that it be conscious, that I'd be aware to the reaction. It's only when there are glitches in it, when there are problems in it, that awareness becomes necessary and serves a kind of purpose. Now, you see, to go back to the example that I spoke of last time, I think it reveals a great deal about Hitler if you look at it from this perspective. Often enough, in any discussion about what Hitler did prior to World War II and during World War II, he will just be dismissed. People will just dismiss their ability to be aware of what he did. Oh, he was insane. Oh, he was nuts. Oh, he went crazy, you see. Because they find that degree of evil, that degree of doing harm to humanity and to the culture of Europe and every other thing that was good there. How do you explain that? How do you explain the fact that he could do so much evil? You say, oh, it doesn't make any sense. Well, it does make sense if you remember that his alcoholic, abusive father scared the daylights out of him, threatened his life, used to actually beat on him until he wept and wet his pants. You see, and that the only salvation he had was his mother. So that boy came out of his childhood with an unconscious but quite real message: my life is in danger, I have to save my life. You see, and his way of being threatened, the manner in which his father threatened him, made him feel like the only way to save his life was to reverse the murder with which he was threatened. And so he wraps himself in the power of Germany. At the time that he took over, Germany was mistreated as he was. The Treaty of Versailles had been unjustly imposed. The war indemnity and all the rest of it had been unjustly exacted out of the German economy and so on, and they were wearing a guilt which was not justified. So he could easily identify with that, you see, wrapped himself in the German government, wrapped himself in the power of German industry, wrapped himself above all in the training and power of the German army, and then 55 million people had to die. And as a part of saving his life, many, many others had to die. There's a wonderful documentary called, in German it's called Niedergang. In English it was called Downfall, which was a perfect title. And I liked it as a description because it's one of the few depictions of Hitler that I have ever seen where his utter nihilism was portrayed. He was going down at the end, and Europe and the rest of the world, and Germany above all, was going to be destroyed. You see, it makes sense if you remember that in 1945, with his artistic buddy Albert Speer in mind, who was the armaments minister at the time, and was always Hitler's buddy because he was a fellow artist, you see. The aspiration from Vienna days was still there. But he gave what is called a Nero order, because Nero fiddled while Rome burned, and what he did was ordered Speer, whom he trusted to carry this out, to destroy the railroads, to destroy the mines, to destroy the canals, to even destroy the lampposts in the various other facilities in the German cities. It was all going down because he was going down. I die, it all dies, you see. So even his own country, his own people, his own cities would be nihilistically obliterated as he lost his life. And there it is. It makes sense. It's not sane in the sense that we use that word, but it's understandable. I was treated evilly. I felt like the only way to save my life was through this kind of evil. I will do as much of the evil as I can possibly do and be destructive. And there's a depiction, you see, of how this basic training works. One of the ways I like to illustrate the presence of this is I talk about the necessity for a director in putting together a play or a film. Now think about it. The actors who participate in these shows are professionals. They arrive with their lines memorized. What do you need a director for? You see, and the point is that it's the director who helps these well-trained actors who know their lines to move and react and inflect the language and use the words in a way that indicates the basic pattern of wants and needs that they're striving to achieve with their actions, with their words. In other words, they don't say it directly. If it's stated directly, it's considered bad writing. It's called on-the-nose writing, and you talk about what the character is really looking to do. And that's never done in good writing. You see, of good script composition. But the director helps these actors to express it with the right facial reactions, the right tone of voice, and so on. And so when you're done watching the play, when you're done watching the film, you have been guided through the basic training of the various actors who are participating in the drama to understand what they're after, what they're trying to achieve, what they're trying to do in relation to each other, and so on. See? And in that sense, you come away with a satisfied feeling of understanding what the characters, what the play was really all about. Well, it's really our participation, sharing in the basic training that gives us that feeling. So it is always there. And the choice that you and I and every individual has is either to know it or not know it. It's always there.